mainly are focusing on getting you to synthesize what you've discovered in the last 4 weeks. Basically, if you take a careful look at what you've done through those first 4 weeks and try and identify for yourself the issues that you think are most critical. Again, I recommend you look at the futures paper from AACC, and it wouldn't hurt if you haven't. Just look at the topical headings. You don't have to read it, of the reimaging the community college, and see for similarities and differences. Now, I'm going to say a little bit more about the specifics of research. I think you have to set your context before you can actually talk about the research. So, the first set of slides are just another reinforcer of how important it is that we understand the increasing diversity in the clientele of the community college. I was there when it first got started. I dealt with the group that came, I first got started, I mean, the great growth spurt of mid-'60s. Then we went into dealing with, probably 5 years later, we started getting real influx of veterans from the Vietnam era period. We dealt with quite a few during the late 70s with the various recessions of the Carter administration. A couple years after that, before Reagan got things focused, we had some with him. So we dealt with an awful lot of changing clientele. And they're, right now, the one thing that's been added now, of course, is we are dealing with a much more international institution. The urban schools always were pretty heavily, but now it's even the more suburban and rural ones. Okay, that second set of tapes, there are a number of priorities and questions that is found in that second set of slides, particularly the very last set of questions. Well, the first set are on slide number 11. The second set are on slide 21. 21 is where I would call your attention, because one of the things that you're going to be involved in as soon as you reach any kind of leadership position in the community college, department or division head on up, you're going to be dealing with policy formation. You won't essentially adopt it. You will write them, you will modify them, you will submit them to your governing board. It's a very important thing, and you'll be seeing more of that when you take the course on the relationship between the board and the staff of the institution. Okay, then I'd like to move on, if I can, and talk a little bit about the research paper. First, I would introduce it with what you personally consider to be the top 5 or 6 issues that have emerged, say, in the last 5 years. That would certainly give you an idea. Pretty much it would be the middle of the Bush recession and the rather gradual emergence from that recession that we've experienced in the last 3.5 years under President Obama. But one of the questions to ask about research is, well, who's doing it? Where do these people come from? What are their bona fides for doing the research that they're doing? I think that would be very critical. Some of these folks, you've seen I've been somewhat critical, both in writing and with the YouTubes, because I've been around a long time. I've worked with some of these folks. I know pretty much how to sort the sheep from the goats. Some of those folks should not be writing about community colleges. Either they have a conceptual framework that doesn't integrate with community colleges, or they're carrying somewhat of a bias against community colleges. And I don't care for that. Places you might want to think about, if you haven't looked at them already: NYU, Columbia, University of Texas, University of Alabama, along with, of course, the League for Innovation in the Community College and AACC. All are sponsoring research. If you want to do any follow-up data gathering for yourself, it won't be hard. All you have to do is go to the websites for these places and look, for example, at the League for Innovation and look at AACC, and you see what topics they're publishing research on. So I think that's very important. Again, this is where you can link your issues, a simple totaling, for example, of the articles that the League for Innovation has in its available position papers would tell you how high up in their thinking what you consider to be most important really is. Okay, the next thing I want to talk a little bit about is not only who is doing the writing in terms of their generic bona fides? Who are they affiliated with? Are they sort of coming out of their own venue? But I also, one of the things I've always tried to determine is the extent to which many of these folks who are writing have spent any time at all in a community college, even visiting a community college. I see some of them that don't. And I worry about those who want to tell us how to do the business if you're not spending any time on the campuses. Even though I've been retired now for 2.5 years, I'm still visiting the one from which I retired. I've visited a number of them over the last couple of years. I've got a visit scheduled as soon as June the 1st to Bucks County in Pennsylvania, which is one of the leading institutions in that state. I'll be visiting one in New York in the early fall. These are visits that are not just social. These are visits for me to be able to see what is actually going on so that, yes, I can read the research, and I do, but I also ought to be talking to students. I ought to be talking to faculty. I ought to be talking to student services personnel, and certainly the leadership cadre to the extent that they're available. I think all of these things are very, very critical. Okay, that pretty much is where I would direct you to go. And I think you can write a very fine paper. Now, the other thing I want to suggest, I know it's been a very busy, demanding, challenging semester. Some of you have fallen a little bit behind. I'm not worried about it. I have until probably around the mid part a week after next, probably by around a week from this Wednesday, to have everything in that I can turn in, have everything in that I can grade before I turn in your grades. If there's going to be a problem, one good thing, there are many good things about our institution, Morgan State. One of the good things is they're very relaxed about the incomplete. So, and we don't have what you would call precursor courses. That is, there's very few instances. You should take intro to ed research before you take qualitative, quantitative, or mixed. But beyond that, I think pretty much anything can be linked with anything else. So don't feel if you take an incomplete that you have to stop. You'll be able to do your follow-up work. If there's any problem with the system, I'm never sure what exactly they do with our system. You can always send it to me directly by email. You have that email address. And one final comment I want to make, I think it's critical, is what you're getting here is going to help you a great deal as you move into a course of somewhere within the next 10 months. You'll be taking our 611 course, which is a synthesis getting you ready, prefer to call it a capstone course for phase 1 of the program. So keep your notes precise, keep your references clear. Okay, as I said, that's pretty much all I have to say for right now. It's been a pleasure working with you. I'll be communicating with you more in writing later. Thank you.